total assistance to Ukraine going back to February of 2022, the United States has provided about $75 billion. We have about 400 American citizens and their family members, so it's roughly 1,000 people who are stuck in Gaza.
ISIS, Nazis is all bad.
Is it more than coincidence that we have so many challenges in this world all occurring now at the same time?
Overall, we provided about $1 billion in assistance to the Palestinians.
Can you guarantee us that no taxpayer money, no U.S. taxpayer money, went to fund the attack that Hamas delivered in Israel on October the 7th?
There's $2 billion in this request for support for the Treasury Department to work with the IMF and the World Bank.
And
With
it's
all
in the
due
budget.
respect, it's not working.
This is
It's not working.
This
Department of Defense is the only federal agency that has never, in the history of ever, been audited.
Thank you for this opportunity to testify before you today.
Populated areas. Stop supporting the genocide and ethnic cleansing of the people of Gaza. Ceasefire now. Save the children of Gaza. Save the children of Gaza. Ceasefire now. Where is your pride, America?
I do recognize that people feel very passionately, but I ask that we have order in this hearing room and respect our speakers. We will move forward with the hearing.
We're standing up for our interests and values, not shrinking back. Not in the face of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Not in the face of an intensifying strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific and around the world.
If the witness will suspend, and I ask that everyone again respect this hearing, we will suspend until the room is cleared.
Is calling for a ceasefire. Shame on you all. The world is calling for a ceasefire. The American people don't want to support this brutal war. Stop the war. Stop the ceasefire now. Stop funding this brutal massacre that Israel is doing on the people of Gaza. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now.
Thank you, Senator Blinken, if you can continue.
I'm looking at your and the president's proposed supplemental. What does $16 billion for child care, $6.5 billion for the Federal Communications Commission to extend high-speed internet, and $3.1 billion for the FCC to reimburse telecommunication companies to replace insecure equipment have to do with the world challenges we're facing right now? And why did you make this request?
I would defer to other colleagues on those specific aspects of the
Do you
budget
support
request.
those?
I support the supplemental budget request.
Okay. Last question. Mr. Secretary, I appreciate your candid answers, but why did the Department of Defense oppose my bill calling for a special inspector general in Ukraine so we could follow every penny of American taxpayer money, given the fact that the Inspector General of the Department of Defense has never been able to audit his own department?
The Inspector General of DOD has been involved in this effort from the very beginning.
Oh, I know. Believe me, he opposed my bill, and I find that ironic because the Department of Defense is the only federal agency that has never, in the history of ever, been audited. But your Inspector General insisted that he be in charge. Do you not see the irony there with respect to Ukraine?
Senator, I'm confident our Inspector General will do a great job in making sure that we remain on track with our responsibilities in Ukraine, and Europe.
High level, can you tell me the amount of funding overall under your watch that's gone into Gaza?
So overall, we provided about $1 billion in assistance to the Palestinians through the UN Works and Relief Agency.
That's a significant amount of money. I look forward to going through the detailed response you provided, and I appreciate that commitment to do so in a timely fashion. Can you guarantee us that no taxpayer money, no U.S. taxpayer money, went to fund the attack that Hamas delivered in Israel on October the 7th?
So we have, and we've had from day one, and we'll obviously get back to you in response to this letter, a robust monitoring, inspection, verification system for the assistance that goes to any international organization, and including.
Can you guarantee,
UNRWA.
though, that U.S. taxpayer dollars didn't go to Hamas to help fund this attack on October the 7th?
So everything that we're doing in terms of making sure that the assistance is used for purposes for which it's designated, not for other purposes. As I said, we have a robust system in place.
Can I share my concern, Mr. Secretary, to be more specific about this? In May of 2021, I traveled to Israel after the 11-day war. I met with Prime Minister Netanyahu with his national security advisor. They briefed me and my team on the fact that every humanitarian aid dollar, every foreign aid dollar that goes into Gaza is controlled by Hamas. They either direct it, they tax it, or they divert it. They even take pipes intended for the water system for civilians and turn those into rockets that are aimed at Israel. We've seen Hamas's own videos demonstrating this. So I'm going to come back and ask you, can you guarantee that U.S. taxpayer dollars weren't used in October 7th attack?
What I can guarantee is that we take every possible precaution to ensure that these resources are not diverted. Second,
let me come at it another way then, Mr. Secretary, because your own State Department has made an internal assessment on this. Madam Chair, I'd like to submit for the record a set of internal State Department emails from 2021 that were obtained via FOIA. And
No
Secretary
objection.
Blinken, I'd like to specifically read from part of that. The assessment of your own State Department in 2021 is that, quote, due to Hamas's overall strength and level of control over Gaza, there is a high risk that Hamas could potentially derive indirect, unintentional benefit from U.S. assistance to Gaza. Secretary Blinken, do you agree with this assessment?
I do.
Why is it so important that we provide supplemental funding for Ukraine, the Indo-Pacific, and humanitarian assistance in addition to military aid to Israel?
I think it's important to remind ourselves that what happens in Ukraine and what happens in Israel matters not to just Ukraine and Israel. It matters to us. It affects our national security as well. We also have to remind ourselves that these countries are in a fight. They're fighting every day, and there are people dying every day. And in Ukraine, Putin continues to attack civilians and commit war crimes that are despicable. And so these countries urgently need the resources to ensure that they can continue to defend their sovereign territory.
On the $10 billion in humanitarian assistance, some of my colleagues have raised concern that that could end up in the wrong hands, including Hamas. Can you just walk the committee through the reason why you requested it and how you are confident that if aid is provided in places like Gaza, it will not end up in the hand of terrorists?
We've set up a system where assistance is coming through Rafah, the gate between Egypt and Gaza. The assistance is checked by Israel at a site that has been established to do that, so that every truck that goes in is verified by Israel as well as by the Egyptian authorities. The trucks go in, these are UN trucks. They go in, they connect to other UN trucks on the other side of the line in Gaza. These trucks then go to distribution facilities that are run by UN agencies. If you look at it, total assistance to Ukraine going back to February of 2022, the United States has provided about $75 billion, our allies and partners, $90 billion. If you look at budget support, the United States has provided about $22 billion during that period, allies and partners, $49 billion during that period. Military support, we provided about $43 billion, allies and partners, $33 billion. Humanitarian assistance, the United States, $2.3 billion, allies and partners, $4.5 billion, plus another 18 to 20 billion in caring for the many refugees who went to Europe and outside of Ukraine.
If we don't send the resources, does that increase the probability that someday we'll have to send young Americans into the European theater?
Absolutely, Senator Reid. I think, as we said earlier, if Putin is successful, he will not stop at Ukraine. And if you're a Baltic state, you're thinking, I'm next. And you know, there's no question in my mind that sooner or later there will be he will challenge NATO, and we'll find ourselves in a shooting match.
And so, in one sense, this comes down to a choice between lending them the tools to do the job or seeing young Americans facing combat.
I agree, Senator.
Thank you. We have also a necessity to get many American citizens out of Gaza. And can you assure us that you're doing all you can to achieve that objective?
We are, Senator. We're working on this every single day. We have about 400 American citizens and their family members, so it's roughly 1,000 people who are stuck in Gaza and want to get out. I'm focused on this intensely. My entire department is as well, both in the region and here. We're working with various parties to try to facilitate their departure from Gaza. The impediment is simple. It's Hamas. We've not yet found a way to get them out through whatever place and by whatever means that Hamas is not blocking. But we're working that with intermediaries. We're working that for them. There are also another roughly 5,000 third country nationals from other countries seeking to get out.
Do you believe it's the goal of Hamas to destroy Israel, not to have a two-state solution?
Don't have to take my word for it. Take Hamas's word for it. It's in their
I
charter.
couldn't agree with you. You agree with that, General Austin?
I do. They have said so.
All right, so we're fighting somebody who's not trying to help the Palestinians. They're trying to kill all the Jews. Would it be fair to say that Hamas is a modern-day version of religious Nazis?
I think there are different ways to qualify it. I would simply say that what
Well,
we've
is that
seen
a-
in recent,
is that a good
well, the most recent,
characterization?
I think the best recent analogy, Senator,
Yeah.
is ISIS.
Is that okay with you for me to call them religious Nazis?
I agree with Secretary Blinken.
Yeah.
There's a direct parallel to ISIS. As a matter of fact, I
Yeah,
think they're
okay,
two
yeah,
steps-
well, that's right. ISIS, Nazis is all bad. We all agree with that. Is that a red line? Can we tell the Iranians today, in case they're watching, if an American is killed by your proxies in Syria and Iraq, we're coming for you? Can you say that?
I think Iran should be held accountable for the activities of these Iranian.
Okay, does that mean that we would consider going to the source of the problem? The great Satan is Iran, not Israel. It's not the United States. Can we say publicly to the families who have service members over in Iraq and Syria that we will hit Iran if they try to kill an American through their proxies? Can we say that?
What we have said and what we'll continue to say, Senator, is that we're going to hold.
Well, I wish you would be more clear, because I'll tell you this. If one of these soldiers is killed, I'm going to say it. And I hope other people will join me.
Ask you about the suggestion that's being floated that humanitarian aid is going to go through the UN, and the UN is going to take some funding off of that in ways that support the UN and don't support the end goal of that aid. So can you just point out why that is not correct?
First of all, that's just quite literally and practically not the way it works. The Security Council is not involved in these either the decisions about how the aid is used or distributed. It's individual UN agencies. Some of the critical UN agencies that are involved in providing assistance, like UNICEF, like the International Organization for Migration, like the World Food Program, happen to be led right now by Americans. In fact, 3 American women. And so we have great confidence in the ability of these agencies to do the critical work that they need to do.
Is it more than coincidence that we have so many challenges in this world all occurring now at the same time?
I think a number of things have come together to cause what we're seeing happen, but certainly a failure on our part to follow through with in support of our allies or partners exacerbates some of the things that we're seeing right now.
I'll summarize, if I might, Secretary. If we only send weapons to Ukraine, but we fail to support their government and their economy, they will lose to Putin's aggression nonetheless. Is that correct, Mr.
I
Secretary?
absolutely agree, Senator.
Closing quick point, there's $2 billion in this request for support for the Treasury Department to work with the IMF and the World Bank. It would unlock $50 billion in support. I hope my colleagues will look closely at the ways that that would allow us to support critical allies like Egypt and Jordan, as well as other countries around the region and world that are facing instability because of the war in Ukraine.
I'm hearing from industry that they are currently lacking the investment to help quickly accelerate rocket motor production for the interceptor missile to meet the new increased demand. The Ukraine portion of the request includes language allowing appropriated dollars to support infrastructure investments to accelerate production. Should we include similar language to support infrastructure investments to help meet the interceptor missile demands?
Senator, as a general rule, we're going to do everything that we can to meet the demands that we see in both Ukraine and Israel.
What we're working to do from the perspective of the State Department is to work closely with other countries to get them to assume their share of responsibility in dealing with this migration. And that means, and
With
it's
all
in the
due
budget.
respect, it's not working.
This is
It's not working.
This is, as I said, a problem of truly historic proportions, requires a comprehensive effort that we're making. It also requires a lot of things, including comprehensive immigration reform, the very first piece of legislation the president put before Congress would have done that. Unfortunately, it hasn't been addressed.
Here's
in
what
the
I'm
last 3
concerned about, and I think a lot when you see the 200 from the terrorist list. I know we're all concerned about this, that seeds of foment of terrorism could grow in all of, as you see this sort of seeds of unrest in our own country. As we're watching Ukraine and we're watching Israel, we don't want to take the eye off the ball of what's actually happening here.
Do we have a process to deliver fuel into Gaza that assures that it doesn't get diverted to Hamas?
We're working urgently on that. I'll say two things very quickly about it. First, Hamas has its own stockpile of fuel. If it cared a whit about the people of Gaza, it would make sure itself that it used that fuel to have the hospitals be able to operate, have the incubators stay turned on, et cetera. But of course it doesn't. And we have an obligation to do everything we can, if Hamas is not going to do it, to look out for people in Gaza. So we are working on a mechanism that can get fuel to where it's needed.
Iran has a long and well-documented history of being the primary funder of Hamas. Iran has supplied Hamas with the funds, arms, missiles, drones, and other equipment, as well as training and technical expertise. I find it extremely hard to believe that Hamas would have carried out its brutal attack on Israel without Iran's knowledge. Secretary Austin, in the immediate aftermath of Hamas's attack, the administration claimed it did not have evidence that Iran was involved. Is this still this administration's position?
It is from the standpoint of we didn't see direct involvement in the planning or the decision to execute this on a part of Iran.
Since I only have one question, no one else is going to ask you about this, and it's unrelated to this matter, tangentially anyway. We recently did a deal with the Maduro regime in Venezuela, in which we lifted sanctions in exchange for free and fair elections that they were supposed to comply with. It's taken them 2 weeks now. They have violated that. They canceled the opposition's primary election, continue to ban their winner of that primary. They basically wiped out the election. They've broken the deal. Are we going to reimpose sanctions?
Senator Rubio, thank you very much for the question about Venezuela. As you know, following the agreement that the unitary platform, the opposition, reached with the regime on a way forward toward elections, we wanted to support that, and part of supporting that was to encourage that to move forward, including by lifting some sanctions with the ability, of course, to snap them back. Or to put some licenses in place that can be revoked very quickly. If the regime has in fact violated the agreement that it reached, then of course we'll take the necessary action.
And in order for people in Israel to be able to tuck their children in at night, and people across this globe, we must eradicate Hamas. In doing so, we've got to take the threat of Iran seriously and what they've been doing across the globe, what they've been funding, who they have been training. You said earlier, Secretary Blinken, you agreed with Senator Graham that the normalization efforts with Saudi and Israel, that was one of the links in the chain that led us to where we are today. My question for you is, do you agree that the strategy of what I would call appeasement from this administration that occurred starting with the Obama administration now to here when it's easing off of sanctions, even offering to enter back into talks about the JCPOA, that type of behavior also contributed to where we are today?
Oops. Thank you, Senator. It won't surprise you that I wouldn't agree with that statement, even though I agree with pretty much everything you said right up to that statement. And again, I just point out that when it comes to Iran, two things very quickly. One,
And go ahead. And I know I have a limited time.
Very quickly, we've been engaged in going at Iran for its support in a whole variety of ways for malicious activities throughout the region, including support for terrorism, including destabilization. That's involved, as I said, sanctioning more than 400 Iranian entities and individuals over the last 2.5 years.
And not to cut you off, but I know that she's going to cut me off. So, in order to actually do this, we have to go back to a strategy of maximum pressure. I hope you'll work with your other countries here in G7 to actually do that. Can you commit today that this administration will not resume talks to enter in with Iran to enter the JCPOA?
Well, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals about our diplomacy. I can simply say that it was a big mistake to walk away from the JCPOA because at least it took one problem off the table, which was Iran's nuclear program. Unfortunately, since we've moved out, Iran has turned that back on. And so that just adds to the threat that Iran poses.
Obviously, we're going to disagree on that. We more recently heard this administration say that there is a red line. Do you believe that Iran understands what that red line is?
Senator Britt, we've been clear that the protection of our troops is important, and we will do what's necessary to protect them. And this activity has to change. If it doesn't change, we will respond, and again, we'll respond at a time
of our choosing. Yes, and I just want to make sure that we have we been clear with Iran what that red line is? Do they understand that?
We have been clear about what I just said, Senator Britt.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and thanks both of you all. It's been very enlightening, and it's been very interesting in hearing you all's approach on this. First of all, we know that Ukraine can't succeed without U.S. support. Can Israel succeed without U.S. support? Just yes or no very quickly on that. Either one.
That's correct. My assessment is that if the United States does not continue to support Ukraine, they will not succeed.
Right, but can Israel without our support?
That's right.
Can Israel make it without our support?
I think no. I think we have to continue to support them as they.
I'm just asking you questions that people are asking me. So they're saying, well, we've been giving $3 billion, and Israel's very advanced. Ukraine was not. We had to bring them up to speed to be able to fight their fight, and we're committed there. And Secretary Blinken,
I would simply say that on the one hand, Israel prides itself in being able to defend itself by itself, but a critical function of its ability to do that is the support that we provide.
That's about as Washington, D.C. as it gets.